Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to help support the show by becoming a premium member, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast to sign up. Memberships are only $2.99 a month. By becoming a premium member, you'll be able to download episodes onto your mobile device and listen to them commercial-free wherever you go. Also, if you'd like to check out the new Dogman Encounters t-shirt store, please go to dogmanencounters.com/store and take a look around. Buying a t-shirt or sweatshirt there is another great way to help support the show. As always, thanks for listening. Before I bring on tonight's guest, I've got a few encounters I'm going to narrate for you. The first encounter took place in Fannin County, Georgia. My wife and I had fallen on hard times and were living with her mom and her husband on Caldwell Road. I grew up about 2 miles from their house. I always loved going into the woods and still do today. The Cohutta National Forest was my playground growing up. It wasn't unheard of for me to spend a few days in the woods. On the day in question, my wife, her mother, and I went shopping and were coming home on Highway 2. We were in my dad's F-150, which had a brush guard on the front of it. It was very dark and foggy that night. Jack's River was on our left about 10 yards from the road. We were about 250 yards from Caldwell, and there was a very sharp curve to the right ahead. When I took that curve, I saw that something was in the road and that it was on all fours. I had no choice but to hit it. When I did hit it, the truck went completely over it. We felt a thunk as we drove over it. I stopped to make sure the animal was dead because I didn't want it to suffer, and I also wanted to check the truck. The truck was okay, but when I looked at the creature, it was strange looking. So I got back in the truck and turned it around so the headlights would allow me to see it better. It was the craziest thing I had ever seen. It was black, but not a regular black. It was like its fur absorbed the light. No light seemed to go past it. I still couldn't make out the animal. The only thing I was able to make out was that it was the size of a young bear. It looked to be between 200 and 250 pounds. It was clearly dead and its head was twisted back. I believe the tire went over its neck and broke it. Its eyes were blue but looked glassy the way eyes turn when something's dead. It had long curved claws too. Its teeth were all curved back and sharp. I didn't want to freak the girls out, so we went home. The next morning I grabbed my 30-30 and my 357 and headed back there to take a look at it in the daylight. It was gone. Nothing was there. No blood, no fur, but there was an impression in the grass where it had been the night before. It looked like something big had come along and carried it off into the woods. I could see where something walked into the woods, so I went back to the truck and got my trekking bag. It just had a tarp, wool blanket, 2 quarts of water, and a little bit of food in it. That was just enough to make it a night or two in the woods. After grabbing that pack, I headed into the woods to track whatever this thing was. I never really saw clear tracks, just a broken stick here, leaves turned over there, rocks that were disturbed from their bed, and that kind of stuff. I tracked it about 2 miles to a field that was about half a football field in size, right to the middle of that field. That's when all the sound stopped. I went all over that field and around its perimeter, and there was no sign of it coming out of that field, just going into it. That stumped me, so I gave up and started back to the truck. But when I got to the edge of the field, I got a very bad feeling in my gut. I can't explain it any other way. It was so bad that it almost doubled me over. After a short while of collecting myself, I tried to head back to the truck again, but the same thing happened. I knew about where I was in comparison to where the roads in the area were, so I headed in the opposite direction towards a friend's house about 5 miles away. I finally got out of the woods just before dark. I told my friend about what had happened, and he told me never to go into that field again because that field was supposed to be cursed ground, that it was a place of dark magic and that people have gone missing after going into that field. I don't know what I saw that night, and I don't know if the rumors about that field are true, but I do believe that there's something strange in those woods. The woods are a part of me. I could never stay out of them. I'm not afraid of anything in the woods. I just want to be careful around one of these things like I would a bear. Time, 11:30 p.m. Date, winter of 2008 or 2009. The second encounter took place in the Bristol area of England. We secured a contract working for Virgin Media between Exeter and Bristol. The guys we were working for rented part of a farm in Almondsbury and kept some of our gear there. Because the hotel prices were so high, we bought a caravan to stay in and set it in the farmyard too. That was a bad idea. The farm was about 3 miles from the nearest house. We had heard about black cats roaming Exeter and Devon, but what we saw around 2 a.m. was no cat. We had finished a night shift around 12 and had been lights out for around an hour when the security light kept coming on the far side of the barn, which was around 100 meters away. Having lots of equipment, we had problems with gypsies stealing our gear, so we got dressed quickly and headed out to see what made the security light come on. As we rounded the barn, the security light's timer turned it back off. I don't know why, but we both froze. The security light didn't come back on, but we could hear movement, which meant whoever was there had gotten into the barn as the light was on the outside of the barn. We didn't want to warn them of our presence, so we went through the back door of the barn. Inside the barn was a tractor. It was a Case 340. Google these tractors to see how big they are. Somebody or something was standing next to the tractor, but the shadowy figure was maybe a foot taller than the back wheel. That meant this thing was about 8 feet tall. At this point, we were standing in the barn, looking from the back of it to the front opening. The front was open. It was a 3-sided building, if you like. The door we were peeping around was a normal 7-foot door. Bright moonlight was shining in through the front of the barn, and as my eyes adjusted, I started to make a shape out. Pointy ears? What the? This thing was like a German Shepherd, but 4 times bigger. But its dimensions were off. The legs were right, but the upper body didn't have a barrel chest like a dog. It was flatter. Dare I say it was more human-looking. At this point, 2 things happened very quickly. My brother, who had been behind me and silent all the time for some reason, lost his nerve and shouted, "Run!" At this point, the thing snapped its head around in our direction and looked straight at me. My brother had bolted already. This thing had amber eyes and it looked pissed. It felt like an eternity, but this happened over a few seconds. Then the security light switched on again at the front of the barn and this thing bolted. And I mean bolted. It dropped to all fours and left the barn and cleared a 5-foot barbed wire fence within a flash and was gone. Time, 2:02 a.m. Date, February 2017. The third and last encounter took place in Maricopa County, Arizona. I'm not sure how old I was at the time, maybe 7 or 8, but I was born in 1971 in Colorado. My mom divorced my father when I was about 6. We moved to Arizona to get away from him because he was stalking and antagonizing my mom. I had just made a good new friend in my new school and was trying to adjust to new life in a new state. We lived just outside of Phoenix in an area that was still only moderately developed at the time, with large open vacant lots and not really much vegetation other than patches of built-up tumbleweeds and a few crop fields irrigated by formed ditches. In those days, John and I did a lot of wandering as far as we could by foot. We would often play in those fields and vacant lots because we lived in a trailer court and there wasn't much to do there. One day, John and I were passing by one of the crop fields in the late afternoon about 2 hours before sunset. There was a massive cotton tree close to the irrigation ditch by the road that was one of the only trees to be seen for miles around there. As we got about 100 feet away from it, I noticed something very odd was going on about 15 feet up in the tree. Now at first, I just thought it was the wind blowing the leaves around wildly on just one part of the tree's canopy. The more I thought it over, though, the more it didn't make sense. I didn't feel any wind, and I asked John, why would the wind just blow on a single part of a tree's canopy like that? We stopped and watched it for a while. The leaves were really thick that time of year. It was very hot, and it was hard to see anything on that tree past the leaves, so we decided to get a closer look. As we moved to within about 50 feet of the tree, we started getting nervous because it was clear the movement in the tree wasn't wind and that something was up there in the tree rattling its branches. At this point, our curiosity was turning into fear. John was very prone to panic, but we kept getting closer, trying to peer into the shadows of those branches and see what was going on. I couldn't imagine what would be up there, but as we got about 30 feet away, I could barely make out a dark form behind all those shaking, flapping leaves. some of which were falling off from the commotion. I was thinking, is that a gorilla? As I was starting to identify where the head should be, I saw this face looking at me/us right through a gap in the canopy. Now, my mind couldn't find any terms to describe what I was looking at, but it was so fierce and feral looking I was terrified. John asked me, "What is it?" All I could say was, "I think it's a wild pig." He took off running and I joined him. We ran all the way home in the heat. I don't know if John saw it very well. He asked me a few questions about what I had seen. He knew there was something alive in that tree, but we agreed it couldn't be a wild or feral black pig and that it was unlikely to be a gorilla, so we never talked about it much after that. Now for me, it was very difficult to come to terms with what I saw that day because nothing logical fit. My first reaction, though, of it being a pig was only because I saw a snout on it and pointed ears on the side of its head. Everything on its face was black as ink except its eyes, though, which were very reddish-brown. Actually, they were more red than brown, but contrasted starkly from its face, and they weren't pig eyes. Those eyes scared the tar out of me, and the size of the head was also very shocking because I had never seen an animal with a head that big before. I also remember the teeth. They were so long that even with its mouth closed, the fangs stood out both past the top and the bottom of its snout. The snout was partly what brought about the pig theory because I thought they were tusks. Other than a vague dark shape, I didn't get to see any of the body. There was a bad smell too, but I just assumed it was the farm not far from there. The reason I decided to tell this now is because I had mostly forgotten about it all these years later, except occasionally still trying to identify what it could have been. I ruled out Bigfoot a long time ago. About 10 years ago, I heard about the Beast of Bray Road, but it never stirred up my memory of this thing. In the last few years, I started reading about these Dogman encounters, and it just hit me the other day that's possibly the most logical explanation for what I saw those years ago. Maybe it was something else, but after listening to these accounts, I can't think of what else it could have been. I never told many people about this, and the few people I did tell just told me when you're a kid you fill in blanks like I just made it up or something. My childhood memories are sharper than many of my more recent ones, though. I know there was something scary and unique in that tree. Time, 3:01 p.m. Date, late spring/early summer of 1977 or 78. Well, that was our last encounter. Let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Tammy. Tammy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic.
Oh, thanks for being here. Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Okay. I'm from upstate New York. I was born and raised there. I'm a healthcare professional, and I work in construction here and there as well. I travel extensively throughout the country with my husband for work, and that's about it.
I can only imagine all the great places you've seen traveling across the country the way you do.
I have. I've been to some wonderful places. I've been absolutely blessed to have a position to where we are able to travel extensively.
Oh, I'd say you are. Did you see the woods as a safe place before you had your encounter?
Always. I grew up out in the woods. In upstate New York, it's all woods. And we pretty much grew up in the woods. If not in the garden, in the woods.
Yeah, the woods is a great babysitter. That sounds like a great way to grow up. How much time did you spend in the woods before you had the experience we're going to talk about?
Any opportunity I got, I'd go walking, go hiking. Really enjoyed the woods. Always used to walk there with my mom. I remember growing up at home just for solace and quiet, just to get a different frame of mind. I did look to the woods as something that was peaceful.
Well, it's too bad the woods will never be the same for you now that you know they're out there.
This is correct. They haven't been since. It's been tumultuous because I really enjoy the woods and I miss walking in the woods, especially with my dog. But I will not go out in the woods alone. Absolutely not.
Well, I don't blame you, and I'm glad you at least know about them and you consequently know to take those precautions. You say you've been obsessed with learning as much as you can about Dogman after you had your encounter. Has learning more about Dogman calmed your nerves any?
I think it has. Just knowing that I know that they're out there, that I'm not the only one that knows they're out there. Knowing the signs and signals, what to look and listen for. knowledge is power. So, yes.
Yeah, it definitely is. There was an eyewitness who was recently on the show who's the reason why you decided to contact me. Who's that eyewitness, and why did his encounter affect you that way?
Oh, I listened to several episodes. Every one, actually, I went through, and once I found your show, I went through from episode 1 up until to date. And it was a young kid named Tanner that was from Oklahoma. And I wasn't sure at first what to make of Tanner. He sounded very intelligent, but his voice was extremely shaky. I don't know if it was because he was just nervous about being on the radio, but when he talked about his encounter, it just seemed to come back to him, and his voice got really shaky, and I just felt so bad for that kid. And since my encounter took place in Oklahoma, I just wanted him to know that he's not the only one, and I'm sure he's very aware that he is not the only one to have these eyewitnesses in Oklahoma.
Oh, he's definitely not the only one. Yeah, unfortunately, there are plenty of encounters that have happened there and still continue to happen there. Speaking of which, before you tell us about your encounter, please tell us about where you had it in Oklahoma.
It was the northeast portion of Oklahoma. It was north and east of Tulsa, and it's by a river, the Neosho River.
Is that a really remote area, or are there homes scattered about?
No, it's near a little town called Pryor. There are homes, a small town, but albeit a town. There is a huge industry there. It's the Mid-America Industrial Park. So there's civilization, but it's also very woodsy, extremely woodsy, even though there's civilization scattered throughout.
I see. All right, Tammy, please tell us about your encounter. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, I came home from work one day. I was working at the hospital, so I worked early shift, and I get out around 2 and 3. It was a beautiful fall day. It was October of 2016, to be exact, and it was just an absolutely gorgeous day. So, as usual, I took my dog out for a walk. We were living in an RV park because it was near my husband's work site, which is right on a river. And as we got walking through the RV park, my dog went on ahead, and she went way down in this field towards the river, but I could see her. And I just continued to meander along and just enjoy the sunshine and the blue sky. And you could hear the wind blowing and rustling the few leaves that were left on the trees. And then all of a sudden, the woods was to my right, and movement caught the corner of my eye. And so I turned and looked. And when I did, I literally just stopped in my tracks. It was a massive, I have to say creature, because at the time I had no idea what it was. This thing had a head on it that was as big, just massive, and biggest yellow eyes, yellow amber eyes, and black. The thing was pitch black, and it just stood there and looked at me. And I, in turn, stood there and looked at it, and I'm telling you, I just stared at it. It didn't move. I didn't move. It had what looked to be protruding from behind the ears, which were dog ears, with the point on them, a mane, like a black furry mane. And then I kind of freaked and turned real quick to look for my dog, who I could still see down by the river. And when I turned back, this thing had kind of turned to the side. And when it turned to the side, I could see the back half of it. The front half was big, bulky, like all I can think of is a gorilla with long arms that stretched down to the ground, and I couldn't see any hands or paws because there were so many leaves on the ground. But since it had turned, I could see the back half. And the fur on this was very fuzzy, very furry up at the top half, at the upper body, but seemed to lessen as it got down to its waist. And I would have to say its waist would be tapered, like it was smaller than the big bulky chest and the shoulder area. And the rear legs were like a dog. There was no tail. I saw absolutely no tail, and there was minimal fur on the back half of it. And it did have fur. It was very short, yet jet blackish gray, more of a black gray, where the long fur up in its face and on the mane was the jet black. There was the pointy ears, the pointy snout, and like I said, I couldn't see any hands or feet or paws, so I don't know what they looked like. I stood there and looked at this thing, and I literally, verbally said out loud to myself, what is it? And then after that, this feeling just came over me that was like, I shouldn't be here. I don't need to be here. I need to leave. And that is when I decided to just go ahead, walk on up the road, get my dog, and I went back to my house. When I looked back, it was gone. It didn't follow. It didn't grimace. It didn't snarl. I didn't see any aggression from it. And it was only after this realization came to me, like, what am I looking at? Did the realization come that I can't be here. This isn't good. And then, like I said, I just went home and got my dog and went back in the house. And that was it. I haven't seen it since then.
Well, thank goodness. Although if you have to have an encounter, that is the kind to have. At least it never showed any aggression towards you.
No, none whatsoever. Like I said, and there was no smell to it. But, one thing like everyone says is thinking back on it, there were no birds. There were no insects. And even for that late of October, such a beautiful day as it would have been, there would have been some type of birds or insects out and about, and it wasn't. It was just still quiet, like you were in a vacuum almost. Although the wind was blowing and the remaining leaves on the trees were rustling, it still seemed almost like you were in a vacuum. But no scent, no other noise.
Yeah, that would be awfully strange. For October, yeah, you'd expect to hear all kinds of wild birds singing and carrying on, so yeah, that's definitely not normal. Did your dog act strange at all before you saw that Dogman?
No, she was too far off. She was down by the river in the field, sniffing around the trees down there where the squirrels hang out. She was too far away. When we left for our walk, she always looks back at me and I tell her, okay, go ahead. And she'll go. She'll take off and she'll run to where she wants to go and play. And then I just meander and catch up. She did not go up that path that I took. She cut across other people's lawns and shortcutted it to the field where she wanted to go, where I stayed on the path and went around.
Yeah, sounds like she was a good distance from you then. How close did you say that Dogman was when you saw it?
It would have to be about 60 feet. I measure it because I know our motor coach is 45 feet, and I'd give it another about 10, if that. So about 60 feet. I mean, I had a good look at it, Vic. I did. As you're staring at it, you're going, am I really seeing this? But I really was seeing it, and I got a good look at it. Like I said, the facial features were definitely a dog. The ears being dog-like. The mane, which I would have to call it a mane because that's the only thing I can think of. I don't know if it was his shoulders and they were just so big and the hair was so long on the top of his shoulders and stuck up like a mane that I'm telling you, this creature didn't look like anything familiar to me. I've seen bear. I've seen coyote. I told you I have a coyote pelt hanging up right next to my bed. I've seen wolves. I've seen grizzly bears when I was in Alaska. I grew up in the woods in upstate New York. Moose. There's nothing that you can describe other than the snout and ears looking like a dog that this thing matches, or the chest area looking like pretty much like a gorilla, that big bulkiness of it. It doesn't match any creature that you know.
Well, given your experience in the woods, when you say that it wasn't any normal indigenous creature, I believe you. Was his mouth closed or open when you saw it?
It was closed. It never opened its mouth. Kept its eyes open and on me. That was for sure. It was one of those things where you could tell, although thank God there was no aggression from it, because I've heard people say that there's aggression, that There was none of that, but it was like it wanted me to know I'm here. I'm here. And that, to me, like gave the sense of I shouldn't be here.
Yeah, sounds like you got the message loud and clear, and I'm glad you did. Even though its mouth was closed, could you still see its teeth?
No, I did not see any fangs or teeth protruding from the lip area. No, and I would have been able to, because I'm telling you, the fur on this thing was so jet black. And that's what made its eyes stick out so much, was because they were so bright yellow like a lemon yellow, and big against that black fur. So if it had its lips up or had snarled or sneered or anything, I definitely would have seen its teeth, because I was close enough. They would have stuck out against that black fur. But there was nothing.
If you had to describe a physical feature it had that shook you up the most, what would it have been?
How its chest was so big and bulky. Like I said, all I can think of is like when an ape is down on the ground, how massive it looked. But yet when it turned, the back end was like a dog but with no tail. And the hair was like short. And it just, the sheer size of it. I mean, the head alone. I'm trying to think, if I put my arms around together, it'd be like just a little less than that, you know? I mean, the head on it was massive. And so I would have to say just the sheer size of this thing. I'm estimating if this thing had stood up, which, you know, and all I can think of is because its legs were like a dog, there were no human features to this, like they say, Dogman. Yeah, no human features to this whatsoever. It probably would have been a good 7 feet tall, at least. A minimum, I would say 7 feet tall. It was that big.
Yeah, sounds like it had some size to it. How long was it before you found out what you had seen was actually called a Dogman?
It took me a couple of weeks. Because I work, I have to get up early. I was working at the hospital then, in the surgery center, so I had to get up early every morning because we start surgeries early. I only had a little bit of time before bed, about an hour each night, to kind of start researching this. And I would have to say probably a couple of weeks before I found out about Dogman. But it came about because I had been listening to Coast to Coast, a David Paulides thing, and when I pulled it up on YouTube, Sasquatch stuff came up, and then when I click on a Sasquatch thing, then finally one of the Dogman thing came up, and I thought, well, let me go ahead and check that out. And lo and behold, that's when I found out these things existed, because let me tell you, I had absolutely no clue. I'd never even heard of one until I started doing the research. I didn't know what it was that I saw. You know, for me, it was almost like seeing a lab experiment gone wrong, is all I can say, until I started listening to some of the shows and people describing exactly what it is that I saw.
Well, Dogman's not exactly a household term, at least not yet, so no one could fault you for not knowing what it was that you were looking at that day. There's something about the way you prefer to sleep, Tammy, that I give you a hard time about. Please tell the listeners about that.
It's because I sleep with my head next to an open window, literally sometimes with the pillow on the windowsill, so I can have fresh air. I don't care how hot it is, how cold it is. I sleep with my window open and my head right there. But I do that because we travel. Our home is a 45-foot motor coach, and my bedroom window is a good 7 feet up off the ground. And I know people have stated they have had Dogman at their windows on the second story level, but I don't worry about that. We have a little street light outside at the RV park we're in now, and actually I'm kind of hoping to see another one from a distance, obviously, and from a safe perspective. And my husband, he would love to see one.
Well, you don't scare easily, I'll give that to you.
I don't go in the woods anymore, Vic.
Well, yeah, but that's more of a precaution that I'd expect you to take. I'm still impressed.
I think it's because it showed no aggression towards me. Had it been aggressive, maybe I would be more afraid. So I'm not afraid in the sense that that type of fear because of the aggression, but I definitely would not want to encounter one out in the woods alone by myself in any aspect. Absolutely not.
Do you know if anyone else in that area has seen any dogmen?
From listening to your show and some other shows, I do know that Oklahoma is a hot spot for them. Now, anyone specifically in the area that I saw mine, I don't know. That no one tends to be very, very specific. They just say X portion of the state. So I just know that there have been other encounters in the northeastern portion of Oklahoma, and some people have eyewitness encounters right near the city of Tulsa, which I was about, at the time, 45 minutes from.
Considering how many dogmen have been seen in Oklahoma, I wouldn't be surprised if a load of encounters have happened in that area. You shared your experience with your husband. What kind of response did you get from him?
It took a whole year, Vic, to be honest with you, to tell anybody about it. And I finally told him this past October. So it was literally a whole year. And we were going on a road trip, and I happened to put one of your episodes on the radio to listen to. And he just gave me this look, and that's when I finally told him. I said, I know, I've been engrossed with these for a long time now. And then I finally said, this is why. And I told him about my encounter. And he was very good about it. He didn't say, oh, you're crazy or anything. He just went ahead and said, well, that's what life's about, seeing the strange things. And that was it. Put his headphones on, and we went about our way. He teases me. He even teased me again last night because I won't go outside now. We have a big spotlight on the front of our RV. And I used to just open the door and let cats and dogs in and out, in and out. I no longer do that. I turn the lights on and look outside before I even open the door. He puts the spotlight on me. If I have to walk my dog at night, I will only stay in the lit areas of whatever RV park we are in. And he puts this big spotlight on me and follows me around with the spotlight. And he'll tease me and say, it's because I don't want the dogman to get you. And we've got this thing where we put cat food out for the neighborhood cats. And he's always teasing me, oh, you're going to feed the dogman again, aren't you? So he does tease me about it, but he also is aware that there's something to it, just like there is with Sasquatch. I mean, he does watch Sasquatch videos, and he is now starting to watch a couple of the Dogman Encounters episodes. So he's realizing I'm not crazy, that it's not just me, and there is something to it.
Well, at least he is supporting you then. I guess we can play the glad game for that.
Yes, he is very supportive. He's excellent.
Well, that's good then. You think something strange was running with coyotes in an area you stopped at not all that long ago. Why did you think that?
A couple things. The coyotes had been out, and this was a few months ago. What is this? January. So it would have been end of October, beginning of November. My husband has a same company, just different project he's on, and now in a little bit of western Oklahoma, central western Oklahoma, in Cushing. And the coyotes had been extremely active, especially when it's warmer out. The coyotes are extremely active. But there were a couple of nights, because we had commented on them, they just sounded different. And unless you constantly heard coyotes and how it is when they hunt and their yips and yelps, but they were running, I don't know how to explain it, just differently. And I had seen one of the comments after one of your episodes where another young lady in Cushing, Oklahoma, where we were, had stated there's something big running with the local coyotes. And I shared it with my husband, and I said, see, it wasn't just us thinking that there's something up with all these coyotes. Apparently, there's other people that have witnessed it too.
Yeah, that is a pretty commonly reported phenomenon. You told me that you were surprised by how much your lifestyle has been altered by your encounter. Why is that, considering what you saw that day?
Like I said, Vic, I grew up out in the country. We were always in the woods, constantly in the woods. I would always walk in the woods. I was never afraid to go take my dog for a walk. Even here, there's a dirt road outside the RV park where we're at, and it's surrounded by woods on both sides of the dirt road, albeit a couple sparse houses here and there. I'm always alert now. I'm listening. Do I hear the birds, the insects? because the minute I perceive that I am not hearing the sounds of nature that should be there, something's up. And so now I'm just very leery. I'm very cautious. Like I said, I don't walk at night unless it's in the light and my husband's got the spotlight on me. I won't walk in the woods, which is a terrible thing. You know, my dog loves to walk in the woods. I love to walk in the woods, but I won't do it. You know, just even going outside my house, like I said, you know, I used to just open the door and go out and boom, whatever's out there is out there. But now that I know these things are out there, absolutely not. The lights all go on before I go out, before my animals go out. Yeah, and my cats are now, we used to let our cats roam. If they wanted to stay outside during the night, they could stay out all night, but not anymore. They're in the house. Both my cats are in the house before we go to bed. We don't go to bed until our fur babies, all of them, are settled in with us. And so it is a big lifestyle change because you're just not comfortable. Or maybe it's just I need to be more alert. I don't know. But you're not comfortable knowing what's out there. It's an apex predator. I don't care what you say. For the size of this thing, it could have taken me out instantly. I would have never even known what hit me, you know, had it decided to be aggressive. And we don't have creatures, you know, we're supposed to be the apex predator. And when you see this, there's a whole different process going on in your brain that says, you know what, we're not the only ones.
Well, like you said, we're supposed to be the apex predators out there, but as you found out, we're definitely not. Have you seen any pictures of dogmen online that look like the one you saw that day?
There is one, and I know that this has per se been debunked. You know, I know that people went out and witnessed it and quote unquote debunked it, but I'm telling you, the minute I saw the Gable film, I knew immediately that was exactly what I saw. There are other pictures of dogmen on the internet that I've scoured through that, you know, features here and there possibly resemble it, because you have to remember this was all fours and it was very, like I said, ape-like except for the snout and the ears and the hind quarters. So it would be that Gable's film. The minute I saw that thing, it was an immediate, that is exactly what I saw. So you can debunk that film all you want. Somebody could have practiced that for forever and a day to take the heat off them. But I am 100% believer that that type of creature exists because I have seen it. Like I said, I saw several pictures of dogmen, and that is what it looked like. That is literally what it looked like. The bigger in the front, and then you could see the hind legs were smaller, shorter, and the bulkiness to the front of it. That would have to be it. Unless you had one of the other figures that was down on all fours, it very well could be, but most of the images on the internet are of a dogman standing up, and that's not how I saw it, so I can't say.
How long after you had that encounter did you find out about the Gable film?
Several weeks, maybe 3 weeks to a month after. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of time at that point to research it, but the minute I came across that film and saw it, I'm telling you, it was like, bam, that's it. That's exactly what I saw. And I didn't know it had been debunked till sometime later, probably 6 or 8 months later. I didn't know they debunked that film. But it was the trigger when I saw it that said, that is the creature.
When you did see the Gable film, I bet you almost fell backwards out of your chair, didn't you?
I did, because I was surprised that somebody would have something like that on film. But that's exactly, I'm telling you, Vic, that's exactly what it was.
Oh no, I believe you. I do believe you. Do you think having another encounter would decrease your interest in dogmen or increase it?
I can't say because I haven't had the encounter, but probably increase it. I know my husband would really love to see one from a safe distance, obviously, but most of these encounters that you hear about are never, quote unquote, at a safe distance, or can be safe, because you never know how they're going to act or react. I was fortunate enough that mine had no aggression. There was no growling, nothing to instill a deep fear in me that would make me want to, you know, have nightmares or anything like that. So I wouldn't mind seeing another one, just so I know this is exactly what I really did see. It would probably make me want to research it even more than I already have, but I've been pretty much scouring the internet since that took place. It has I don't want to say encompassed my life, but I have spent a lot of time researching it and listening to the stories that people have to tell. I think it just makes me feel better to know that I'm not crazy. I'm not a loop-de-loo, that other people have seen this thing too. And that's why I've listened to so much of it and done so much research on it.
Well, you know what they say, be careful what you wish for. You just might see another one someday.
A lot of people, once they have one encounter, tend to have a second encounter. I don't know if it's because they're still in the same area. Maybe it's just wishful thinking mentally. I don't know. And that's another thing I wanted to mention because bringing it up, people are always like, where do these things come from? And are they extraterrestrial? And I got to tell you, the feeling I got from that, Vic, was it's terrestrial, not extraterrestrial, terrestrial. It is a physical creature. It's not from another planet unless it was dropped off, but it's definitely a physical creature.
You travel a lot for work now, like you've already established. When you're behind the wheel, do you constantly scan the wood line as you drive by?
You have no clue because I'm in healthcare and I do travel nursing. I'm constantly on the road and I have to travel to my destination. Sometimes it's the day before work and everything, and I am constant. You know what I do now, Vic? I mean, it's really disturbing that I actually take the flash off my camera phone so that should I be driving at night and I encounter one of these things, the flash won't flash in my windshield and black out the image.
That's a good idea as long as there's enough ambient light outside for you to capture what you're looking at. Then, yeah, that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, but it's not one of those things that I think that far enough in advance that I will take the flash off it, even when I'm laying in bed, because I literally keep my phone right there in the windowsill where my face is, and I keep my flash off at night. I always turn the flash off at night should I see one of these things. It's something that has definitely become somewhat the forefront of my brain. I don't want to say I'm constantly thinking about it. I can function in life. I get up, I go to work, I go to the grocery store, I do everything that daily activities require. But it's also there that I could see another one of these things at some time. So I'm prepared for it in that aspect of maybe trying to get it on film.
It sounds to me like you are, but would you describe your way of dealing with your encounter as being healthy now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I still go outside, just not at night and not by myself. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm able to function and do my daily things. And it's only when my husband teases me or we're doing something that we bring up Dogman. And then obviously, practically every night, I would have to say, I do try and find something that's Dogman related on my YouTube to listen to, that or Sasquatch. But the rest of it, yeah, my life is normal, healthy as it can be.
Yeah, sure sounds that way to me, and that's good. You spent 6 months in Salt Lake City not long ago and had an unexpected experience at a place called Coyote Canyon. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, I went twice to Coyote Canyon, and I didn't go back after the second time. Coyote Canyon is, I think it's called Cottonwood Pass. It's in that area. And it's just a bike trail. It's a beautiful area right at the base of the mountains, and it's right behind a housing development. The first time I went, I stayed on the lower half of the paths. I took my dog, and we just walked a few of the lower paths for something to do. And then a few weeks later, I went back, and I decided to walk the upper paths. It was a little warm out, and it was during the week, so there wasn't a lot of bikers or hikers out at this time. But I decided to go uphill instead of downhill into the canyon. And we got walking up the hill, and we veered more towards, if you're looking up the hill, the mountain up towards the left. And I tend to trust my dog's instincts. We were getting up the hill, and there was it's like a hairpin turn. And I went to walk up there and go turn, but my dog stopped. She stopped, and she stood right by me, and she just looked up at me, and then she just looked up straight ahead, and it just gave me that creepy feeling of normally she'd just run along and run forward and go get whatever's up there, albeit a skunk, a raccoon, a squirrel, a bird. But she didn't. And that just said to me, don't go around the corner. Don't go around the corner. And you just get that feeling that you shouldn't be there. Nobody else was there. It was quiet. It was beautiful. And I guess that's another thing, that quietness. And that's it. We turned around and went back down the hill, and I didn't go back to Coyote Canyon.
Well, I don't blame you, and I'm so glad you listened to your instincts. I wish more people would do that. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, Tammy. Before we do, though, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I would just say that I hope people realize that these things are out there. They do exist. And to just proceed with caution. I mean, don't stop enjoying the things that you do. If you are a camper, just be cautionary is what I can say.
Well, thanks again so much for your time. I really do appreciate you coming on and telling us about those experiences.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been great having you. Thanks again so much. Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.